on Sushruta Samhita Adhyayana. Without further delay, I would like to call upon Dr. Muralidhar Sharma sir, STMC AOP, to take over the session. Welcome to you, sir.
Okay, thank you. We'll start with the next chapter. अथातो हितान्ति अध्यायं व्याख्यास्यामः यथोवाच भगवान् धन्वन्तरिः यद्वायोः पथ्यं तत् पित्तस्य अपथ्यम् इत्यनेन हेतुना न किञ्चित् द्रव्यम् एकान्तेन हितं वा अस्ति इति केचित् आचार्याः ब्रूवते तत्तु न सम्यक् इह खलु यस्मात् द्रव्याणि स्वभावतः संयोगतश्च एकान्तहितानि एकान्तहितानि हित अहितानि च भवन्ति. Now, this is about the dietetics. The whole chapter is about the food and the other activities which would be congenial to the life of the person. Now, there are certain things which are compatible and there are certain things which are not compatible to the life. Now, the man has to live in the nature, and in the nature, you have certain things which are compatible and certain things which are not compatible. So, there is a discussion about that issue. The discussion is there is nothing which is absolutely compatible or absolutely suitable to the body, and the other way there is nothing like absolutely non-suitable to the body. This is one version. Another version is a substance can be suitable to a certain condition in a certain specific condition, and a substance could be non-suitable or incompatible for certain other conditions, like a biopatyam, something which is suitable or which helps in maintenance of a vata condition, may not be suitable for the pitta. This is one logic. The other logic is there are certain substances which can be essentially suitable throughout, and some which are not suitable, ahita also, and they can be modified. Their suitability or compatibility can be modified by combining with other substances. So there could be, when you have combined two of the substances, either it may become suitable or may be non-suitable. This is how the possibility. There are two these aspects or two views on these dietetics in the our traditional approach. तत्र एकान्तिकानि जातिसात्म्यात् सलिलघृतदुग्धोदनप्रभृतीनि. Now, the Sushruta follows the view like there could be certain of the substances which could be essentially suitable all the times, irrespective of the physical condition, and certain substances, certain activities may not be suitable throughout. Now, those ekantihitani, without any combination, these substances like salila, water, ghrita, ghee, dugdha, milk, vodana, the food, rice, these are considered as ekantihita. They are always suitable to the body. There will be no reactions with these substances taken in proper quantities and taken alone without combination. These are the substances which are suitable. Of course, in the present day situation, there are people who say that they have allergy to the milk also. There are people who have allergy to the rice also. These are all the questionable issues, discussion issues. I will come to that part later on as we go into further discussion. We will discuss certain of those issues too. Ekanta ahitani too. There are certain activities which are ahita or non-suitable, and those are dahana, pachana, maranadisha pravurtani, anala, kshara, vishadini. Anala, the fire, which is having that, which is initiated or which has that activity of burning or killing. Now, fire can be suitable in certain conditions. You are in household, when you cook the food, that is suitable, it's compatible. Whereas fire in the wild, it can be non-suitable. Kshara, again, kshara also can be compatible for a certain therapeutic procedures, but when taken as a food, it can be incompatible. Visha, poisons also can be compatible at times by combination, and at times it could be harmful, and rather if it is taken alone, these are harmful. Kshara, Visha, or Anala, fire without control, Kshara without any regulation, or Visha, poison also can be harmful. Sanyoga aparani vishatulyan bhavanti. If improper combination of food substances can be as good as poisons as such. Hitahitani tu yad vayoh patyam tat pitasya apatyam iti. Now, in certain conditions, a substance could be suitable, either a combination or a single substance may be suitable in certain condition, whereas in certain other conditions, it may not be suitable. Like a substance which is suitable for vayu may not be suitable for pitta. Now, that's about the basic discussion about the hita, ahita, or suitability as such. It's an area of high controversy, like whether everything is compatible or not. It all depends upon the how the body reacts to the substance. A human body may react to a substance either based upon the genetic qualities, environmental properties, or at times temporarily transiently due to any of those specific conditions. Even to the food, rice you take, it could be like in certain seasons, rice may not be compatible as you could see in certain physical conditions, rice may not be suitable, and so on. So, suitability or compatibility of the food would be based upon multiple factors, and all the factors need to be considered. And these details, like which are those factors which are to be considered, you will come across in the later chapter. So, there will be more of discussion about these dietetics and preparation in the coming chapters. This chapter is only about the basic idea of the suitability as such. तत्र सर्वप्राणिनाम् अयम् आहारार्थं वर्गः उपदिश्यते. The ahara varga, the food substances which are used, and many of those food substances which are used in those days, either their identity now is difficult, or some of them may not be available. Rattashali, it's a red variety of the rice, which we use often raw rice as such. Shashtikashali is the small sized rice as such. We have many varieties of the rice, among them Shashtikashali still is available. Then Kangu, Kramuka, Kangu is again a sort of cereal, probably something like your this Siridhanya as such. Kramuka is the betel nut. Then Kundaka again is a cereal, some again one variety of the Siridhanya. Panduka, Pitaka, Pramodaka. These are, of course, difficult to identify now. Which are these? But probably they are different varieties of the cereals. Exact identification based upon these names now is difficult. Then Pushpaka is a cucumber. This cucurbita family, cucumbers as such. Kardamaka is the lotus seeds. Then Shakunahrita, Sugandhaka. Again, Shakunahrita is a seed which is carried by the birds. Now, when the birds will eat the seeds, only when it has become ripened, and when those ripened seeds have fallen down, that's considered to be a paksha asset. This is a very important concept. Identification of a proper food and the capability of that in among the animals and birds is much more sensitive than the human beings. Human beings have lost that capacity. ಸುಗಂಧಕ ಕರಮ ನಿವಾರಕ ಕೋದ್ರವ ಉದ್ದಾರಕ ಶ್ಯಾಮಕ ಗೋಧೂಮ ಯವ ವೈಣವ ಏಣ ಹರಿಣ ಕುರಂಗ ಮೃಗ ಮಾತ್ರಕಃ. Harina, Yena, Kuranga, Matrakaha, non-vegetarian food of different animals. It could be deer, it could be the other relatively not usual animals which are where the food is used as such. Nivaraka, Uddaraka, these again are the cereal seeds. Identification of them would be quite difficult as such. Damstra, Karala, Krakara, Kapota, Lava, Titirika, Pingala, Vartika, Mugga, these are the non-vegetarian, the flesh of different animals. Mugga, Vanamugga, Makustha, Kalaya, Masura, Mangalya, Chana, Kahara, Yenama, Adaki, Satinaha. These are all the dicotyledon seeds which have, or maybe the greens which have the dicotyledon property, which we call as bede. So different varieties of those. So you have monocotyledon cereals which are rich in carbohydrate. Then the dicotyledon seeds which are rich in protein, and then the non-vegetarian food also, and Sakina Dhanya. Another is now of course Chana is the Bengal gram. Sakina is this Arhar seed of red variety, which is also is among the Apachya Dravya. Sakina is considered as Apachya in many of the conditions. Whereas Sushruta has included them in the Hitadravya. So there is another of the controversy. Satyana dhanya is one of the apatya dravya which can produce the Handigold syndrome. The seeds which are reddish in color, the variety of arhar which is mixed in that arhar, that's the Satyana dhanya, so which is considered to be the apatya. So there is another of the controversy. Again, we'll keep it at that level, we'll not go beyond that. Then chilli, vasuka, sunishanaga, jivanti, kanuliyaka, manduka pranyaha. These are all the different varieties of the leaf materials which are used in the form of leaf, fresh leaves which are used in the food. Gavyan Ghridam, the ghee of goats, Saindhalavana, Dadima, Amalakam Ityesha, fruits of different variety, Sarvapraninam Samanyata Pratcharamaha. These are considered to be generally Samanyataha, generally for all the beings, these are considered as a Pratcharamaha, suitable for all. So there is a list of substances which could be used regularly without much worry about that. Possibility of sensitivity is lesser with these substances. This is what we have to derive from that. तत्र ब्रह्मचर्य निमातशयन उष्णोदक स्नान निशा स्वप्न व्यायाम एकंतरः प्रत्यतमः. Now brahmacharya, that's brahmacharya is not only celibacy, it's about a regular habit of reading, studying. That pursuit of knowledge is brahmacharya. Then nimakashayana, sleeping in a room without a direct flow of air. Ushnodaka snana, taking bath in warm water. Nishaswapna, sleeping in the night time. And vyayam, regular exercise. These are also considered as ekantada pacharamaha. These are suitable for all as such. Now, as far as the current dietetics and the current concepts of these food are concerned, there are mainly two aspects of the food substances which are considered only about the calorie value and the nutrition value. The other aspects like the possibility of combination producing the harm, the rasa pradhanata, the taste appreciation which can produce the variation, and the adding of substances, combination of adding of the substances producing the changes in the quality, that samskara, these parts are not really given sufficient concentration in the modern dietetics. Of course, the dietetics now is being a huge importance in the medical practice. As per the current law, every hospital has to have a dietitian, and what the dietitian would do is give simply a calorie value of the substance. Calorie value is how much of the energy or how much of the heat could be generated. Basically, the definition of calorie is the heat or heat energy required to raise the temperature of 1 gram of water by 1 degree centigrade. Now, the amount of the energy produced by a food substances during the digestion is the calorie value. And as such, that assessment of the calorie value itself is quite vague because there can be a huge difference between the food depending upon the source, different sources as such. So assessment of the calorie value now is based upon simply a data, statistical data. To get that statistical data, you have many methods. Now, one of the very easy, simple method is you have this website, the URL of the website, where if you put the name of the substance and then click, you get the calorie value of different preparations of that. And this is what usually majority of the people would use. How far it is really useful? Again, questionable. I would never say that it's absolutely useful. But from the academic point of view, if at all you have to know the calorie value of any of the food, this is how it is done. Then the next part is about the nutrition. About the nutrition again, all the food is assessed only based upon the carbohydrate, protein, and the fat contents, as well as the vitamins. The vitamins are given the nutrition value. But the other aspects of the nutrition value, in terms of its impact on the physiology of the body, that's not really given sufficient attention as such. I will come to that part next also. Ekanta hitani cha pravapradishtani. Hitahitani tu yadvayoh pratyam pitasya apratyam iti. संयोगतस्तु अपराणि विषतुल्यानि भवन्ति तद्यथा वन्ये फलक करीर अम्ल फल लवण कुलत्थ पिण्याक दधि तैल विरोहि पिष्ट शुष्क शाक आजाविक मांस मद्य जाम्बव चिविचिमा मत्स्य गोध वराहंश्च नैकध्यम अश्नीयात् वयसा. Now these are the substances which are not supposed to be taken with the milk. and among these fruits, valli phala, the bimbi phala, and karira, bamboo, tender bamboo, amla phala, mango, this lavana, salt, kulatha, this horse gram, pinyaka, these dried seeds, dried content of any of the oily substances after the oil is extracted, that residue of a oil yielding substance. Dadi, curds, taila, and below hipista, the flour of these rice or some cereal acid. There and mamsas also, agarika mamsa, mutton and madhya, alcohol, jambor, the flesh of wild animals, chilji mamasya, variety of a fish, godha varaha. Now, godha is a lizard. Now, whether the people were eating lizards at that time, whether lizards are used as a food, again questionable, big question. Varaha hamster, is bears as such. These are not to be taken with the milk acid. And now, in the present day situation, that incompatibility with the food is not at all a part of the dietetics. But the food allergy produced with the food is a major concern. And the lot of issues, lots of literature is presented over the food allergy, and many of the food substances are identified as having more of the allergens. But this again has a lot of limitation, considering what we have in Ayurvedic text acid, where we will deal with more of that when we go into the next chapters about ahara and preparation, so on. Compared to that, the details which you see in the modern dietetics is absolutely very negligible. But all that we know is about the incidence of this food allergy, and that incidence of the food allergy has a specific pattern. The incidence of the food allergy is maximum in so-called developed countries like America and then Japan or so on in the eastern province, whereas they are comparatively lesser in the so-called underdeveloped countries. And India comes under the zone where the food allergy incidence of the food allergy is lesser. So this gives some lessons like the native food habits of these content countries, where and most of the times, if at all you go into more detail, those countries which have a lesser incidence of the this food allergy, there the vegetarian food content is more, and there is a traditional native system of preparation of the food where many of these spices or others are added. Those countries where non-vegetarian food habit is more prominent, and where the addition of the spices is comparatively lesser and the food preparation doesn't have a native method, the incidence of the food allergy is more. Now, of course, this is another area of lots of confusion and controversy. But anyway, incidence of the food allergy is quite high with many of the substances, and this is a common list, a very frequently used list of commonly used food substances allergy, incidence of the allergy in Western countries. This is from the US, data from the US, and of course from our native food substance factors and the incidence of the allergy, we don't have this kind of a incidence. Most of the food which is used traditionally, they would not have the same type of the allergic complications as such. Rather, we may have more complications of the food poisoning because of improper techniques of preservation, improper techniques of maintenance of the hygiene of the area of preparation. These are the other issues. Again, certain of those issues we will discuss in due course of time. रोगम सात्म्यंच देशम कालम देहंच बुद्धिमान अपेक्षा अज्ञातिकान भावान रोगवृत्तेः प्रयोजयेत. So whatever we have discussed about the dietetics, that's till now is for the healthy person, whereas in a disease condition, patients who have a disease, considering the roga, satmya, again that the acceptability or allergen and non-allergen, this factor also is to be considered. Desha, kala, these factors have to be considered, and avesha agnyadikan, the agnibala of the person has to be considered, and then a suitable diet has to be advised. A diet in a patient with disease is based upon these multiple factors. अवस्थांतर बाहुल्यात् रोगादीनां व्यवस्थितं द्रव्यं नेच्छन्ति विषय इच्छन्ति स्वस्थरक्षणे. Those food substances which are used for the healthy person may not be suitable for all the roga, and in the roga condition you will have to modify this diet, and then the combinations also have to be modified. द्वयोः अन्यतरादाने वदन्ति विषदुग्धयोः दुग्धस्य एकान्तहिततां विषमेकान्ततो अहितम् एवं युक्तरसेष्वेषु द्रव्येषु सलिलादिषु एकान्तहिततां विद्धि वत्स सुश्रुतनान्यथा. The ekantahita and ekantahita, again there was a bit of confusion still with the students. Then the teacher clarifies the ekantahita is when a substance is suitable for the majority of the people. There could be a situation where even a ekantahita, a suitable substance, may become a poisonous or can be harmful when it is combined. Like dugdha, milk is considered as ekantahita, it could be suitable for majority, but when it is given in combination with certain substances like matsya, then it can be ahita, and hence every time you have to consider these aspects. Ato anyanyati sanyogad ahitani vakshamaha. Now, certain of those specific examples of the ahita dravya combinations, and again the common variety of the combinations used in those days, they are mentioned here. Nama viruda dhanya धान्यैः वसा मधु पयो गुणमाशेर्वा ग्राम्य आनुपद औदकं विशितादीनि नाभ्यवरेत. नवविरूढधान्यैः, a sprouted seeds taken with the fatty contents like vasa or madhu payo gudamashehi should not be taken with the masha, the acid, the black gram. Now, sprouting and fermentation, these are the two fashions now in the present day situation. If you look at the dietetics and the details of the dietetics, there is lot of information, lot of articles presented about the advantages of using a sprouted food and fermented food. And fermentation and sprouting are the two considered to be one revolutionary approaches in the dietetics now, and the majority of those health advisors, they suggest about the same. But Sushil says those are to be taken in with the proper guidance. Combination of a sprouted seed with the other substances like madhu payoguda, it can be harmful. It's absolutely true to a great extent. Sprouted seeds, of course, when you sprout, there will be activation of biochemical substances. Many of the acidic substances are produced, and it will have a acidic pH. And when it is presented with some other substance which can react in that, and biochemical activity of the sprouted seeds will be more, and of course it will be easily digestible, the nourishment value is true, but when it is taken in combination with the other substances, then there will be harm as such. And hence, when you use the sprouted seeds as a diet advice, you have to be careful, and it should be taken as far as possible alone without combining with the other substances. Multigrain sprouting and so on, these can be harmful, that's all, but which is a fashion now. Then the ग्राम्य अनुपौदक पिशितादन्य अभ्यवरेत न पयो मधुभ्यां रोहिणी शाकं जातक शाकं वा अश्नीयात. With the payo and madhu, milk and this honey, rohini jataka shaka. Now these are the leaves of different animals, again questionable, like what is that jataka and what is rohini, questionable. Balakam varani kulmashabhyam, the combinations of balaka and varani, again going into the details of what are those exact materials and whether they are really used now, question mark. Kakamachi Vipari Marichabhyam. Kakamachi is still being used, which we now call as a vitamin soap, often used in the preparation of the food. It should not be used with Pipari Maricha. Nadi Bhanga Shaka Kukuta Dadhini Naikadyam. The Nadi Bhanga is that drumstick, and Kukuta is chicken and dahi, curds. These should not be taken together. There are certain preparations where chicken is processed with the curds as well. I don't know, I'm not an expert in that, but I have heard that there could be some preparation of that sort. And I think shawarma, I think the name is shawarma. And very recently there was some incidents of some poisoning with the shawarma and death. Again, it's not the issue. I'm not sure about that. So I am not an expert in that field. It's only a guesswork. Madhuja Usnodakanapanam. Honey with the warm water should not be taken. Pittena ja ama mamsani. Ama mamsa, raw flesh with the bile substances as such. Shura, Krishara, Payasam, Sharikadyam. Alcohol and payasa, they should not be taken together. Savireka and Sahatira Shashpurihi. Saviraka is again a variety of alcohol which should not be taken with the chakuli prepared out of tila. Uh, I don't know whether this is a common used with the alcohol or not. Matsya is a ikshvikara, not the fish with the ikshvikara, sugar and sugar variation. Gudena kakamati with the Guda kakamati. Madhuna mulakam. Budena varaham, madhuna cha saha viruddham. These are the substances which are considered as viruddhahara. These are simply examples, and there could be many of those. Kshirena mulakam, amra jambava ashwa shukara godhascha. The flesh of animals with amra and jambava. Sarvamsha matsyan payasa, all the fish with the milk. In certain books, it's mentioned only chilichima must say with the milk, whereas the Sushil says all the fish with milk. Visheshana chilichimam, specifically chilichima. Kadaliphalam talapalena payasa dadna takrenava. Kadaliphala, banana fruit with coconut milk. And very often we use is present as rasayana, and rasayana is one of the favorite substances, and according to Sushruta, it is incompatible. Dadna takrenava, a banana fruit taken with the these curds or with the buttermilk also is considered as a apatya. Lakuchapalam payasa dadna masha supenava, prap payasa payaso anteva. This lakuchapala should not be taken with the milk, or it should not be taken with the masha supa. It should not be taken either prior to the consumption of milk or after the consumption of the milk. These are considered as the Swatah Viruddha based upon basic quality. Karma Viruddha, there are substances which could be having the Karma Viruddha, antagonistic due to their biochemical activity, which we now use the word antagonistic. Of course, antagonist word is used in pharmacology only for the medicines, it's not used for the dietetics. In the dietetics, you don't use that word antagonistic, but Karma Viruddha is something like an antagonism. Kapotan Sashapatailam Bhistan na Adyata. The flesh of kapota should not be taken with the sarshapatela, and it should not be fried with the karshapatela. I don't know sarshapatela as well. Kapinjala mayura lava titiru godha se eranda darvyagnisdha eranda taila siddhava nadyata. The flesh of those animals should not be processed with the eranda taila. And among those common fleshes, godha is considered named very frequently in Sushruta. That's also an interesting issue. Then Kamsya Bhajane Dasharatra Paryushidam Sarpihi, a ghee stored in a bronze vessel for more than 10 days. Madhuja Usne Usneva, honey with the Usna Virya Dravya or warm substances are Usneva in warm season. Matsya Paripachane, Shrungavera Paripachanewa, Siddham Kakamachim. Kakamachi along with Matsya or the Shunti that should not be taken. Tilakalka Siddham Upedika Shakam. Tilakalka and Upedika, again, Upodika is question mark, like which is the real substance, question mark. Probably one of the leaf vegetable which is used. Narikelena Varahausa Paripasta Balaka with the coconut, Varahausa should not, Varahausa fried Balaka, again, another of the leaf seed, leaf type of vegetable. Then Bhasam Angara Shulyam Nashniya. The Bhasa is a bird, and the flesh of that bird without Angara should not be taken. Atho Manaviruddhan Vakshamaha. Then there is a Viruddhahara, or which can be harmful based upon the ratio of the two substances. Certain of the substances could be harmful if taken in equal ratio. Some of the substances could be harmful if they are taken in an altered ratio. And the proper ratio of the substance is another of the factor which is decisive about suitability of the food. And examples are Madhu Muni, Madhu Sarpishi, Manasa Stule Nashniya. The Madhu and water, Madhu and Sarpi in equal quantities should not be taken. Sneham, Madhu Sneham, Jala Sneham, Vishesha, Antariksha Udaka Anupano. The Sneha Dravya or Madhu, honey with Sneha, any of the other Sneha Dravya, or water with other Sneha Dravya should not be taken, consumed as such. Atha urdhvam rasat dundani rasato viryato vipakadashti viruddhani vakshamaha. There are substances which can be opposite to each other, based upon their rasa, virya, vipaka. And again, give an example, sir. Tatra madhura amla rasa virya viruddho. Combination of madhura and amla rasa dravya together can be rasa virya viruddha. Madhura lavana ja, madhura katuka uja sarvataha. Madhura lavana and madhura katuka dravya should not be used. Now, these are all the very critical issues in the preparation of the food combinations. Food combination is another of the very important issue and quite detailed in the Paka Shastra. Madhura Tikta Rasavipakabhyam. Madhura Tikta should not be used because it can be against each other in the Rasa and Vipaka. Madhura Kashaya Amla Lavana Rasadaha. Amla and Lavana, they are opposite each other based upon the Rasa. Amla Katuko Rasavipakabhyam. Amla Katuka with the Rasa and Vipaka. Amla Tikta, Amla Kashaya Sarvataha. Amla Tikta and Amla Kashaya should not be used together, which they can be harmful. Lavana Kotuko Rasavipakabhyam, Lavana Tikto, Lavana Kashaya Sarvataha, Katu Tikto Rasavipakabhyam, Katu Kashaya, Tikta Kashaya Rasataha. So, combination of these different rasas is considered as non-suitable. But at the same time, Sarva Rasabhyasa, consumption of all the rasas is considered as one of the tathya. So the issue is you should have the consumption of all the variety of the rasas, but not mixed together. They should be taken separately. Now, Taratama Yogamscha, Bhavan, Atisnigdhan, Atirukshan, Atyushnan, Atishitan, Ityavanadin Varteta. Now, anything which could be good or bad should not be taken in either excess or too little of that. So, quantity is another of the factor which decides about the suitability. Any of the Atisnigdha or Atiruksha, Atiushna, Atishita, anything in excess would be harmful. So, Taratama Yoga, the quantity is again a factor which decides about the suitability. विरुद्धानि एवमादीनि वीर्यतो यानि कानिचित् तानि एकान्तहितान्येव शेषं विद्याहिताहितम्. These viruddha aharas which are based upon the virya, they are always harmful. They are ekanta ahita. They should never be taken. Then Vyathim Indriya Daurbalyam Maranam Chadigachati Viruddha Rasaviryani Bhunjano Anatmavan Naraha. These Viruddha Ahara consumption can result in diseases, Indriya Daurbalya, weakness of the organs, different organs of the body, or even death can occur due to Viruddha Rasavirya, and hence you have to take care in the preparation of the food. Yakkinchit dosham utklesha bhuktam kayananirharita rasadishu ayathartam va tadvita raya kalpate. Another general indication to decide whether it is suitable to you or not is when you consume any food substance, if it doesn't produce the symptoms of dosha utklesha. The symptoms of dosha utklesha are the flatulence, irritations, persistent irritations with the same smell, or maybe irregular bowel habits, either diarrhea or constipation. These are the major signs of the dosha utklesha, the first signs of the dosha utklesha. And if any substance doesn't produces these symptoms, or bhuktam kayana nirhareta, if it doesn't get expelled in a proper timing. So usually by 24 hours, whatever you have consumed should be expelled out. And if it produces a constipation, if it retains in the body for a longer duration, rasadishu ayathartam cha, if it produces a improper appreciation of the taste, if the taste is altered, then that can be a cause for the disease. So when you do not know the basic details of the food prepared, if you depend upon these signs, then you may consider whether it can be suitable to you or not. Viruddha ashanajan rogan pratihanti virechanam vamanam shamanam vapi puram hitasevanam. If at all you have consumed the Viruddha ashana, if it is identified early, a better option, best option would be virechana. A virechana should be a better option, or vamana could be better option. Shamanam vapi, or the next option would be shamana chikitsa. You may give some pachana dravyas and then purvamashita sevanam, avoiding that viruddhahara and consumption of the hitahara for the maintenance of that hitahara is the better option. So remedy for accidental consumption of the viruddhahara. Ideally, you should not take the viruddhahara, but if at all you have consumed the viruddhahara, then either virechana, vamana or shamana chikitsa, they are suggested. Satnyato alpataya vapi deeptagnehe tarunasya snigdha vyayama badinam viruddham vitatham bhaveta. A person who has a satnya, who has become conditioned to that specific substance, or due to a relatively small quantity of the viruddhahara consumed, or if the patient has a person has a deep agni, the agni bala is quite more, or if a person is young person in a young age, you may not stick the vyayama balina. Those who do regular exercise, even a viruddhahara may not show its symptoms. So when you take pizza or the whatever that your burger and so on now in the young age, in the when you are in the student period, you may not know the you may not feel that discomfort produced due to that apatyahara, but this can have a cumulative effect, and hence it can result in later on the diseases related to the doshas. And atha vatagunan vakshamaha. Now at the same time, there again in the Sushrutas that classroom, there must have been some question of some other sort, like how you know that Vata has aggravated or Pitta has aggravated, so on. So there was a diversion from the basic topic of the dietetics, and it goes into the Vata Guna. Purvam samudharah snigdhah lavanashchivamartah gururvidaha janah raktapittaभिवर्धनः क्षतानां विषयुष्टानां रडिनः श्लेष्मलास्ये तेषां विशेषेण सदा योगविवर्धनाः वातराणां प्रशस्ता च श्रान्तानां कपशोषिणां मधुरश्च अतिविदाही च कषाय अनुरसो लघुः दक्षिणो मारुतश्रेष्ठः चक्षुष्य बलवर्धनः रक्तपित्त प्रशमनः न च वातप्रकोपणः विषदो रुक्षपरुषः खरः स्नेहबलापहः पश्चिमो मारुतस्तीक्ष्णः कफमेदो विशोषणः सद्य प्राणक्षयकरः शोषणस्तु शरीरिणाम् उत्तरो मारुतस्निग्धः मृदुः मधुर एव च कषायानुरसः शीतो शीतः दोषाणां च अप्रकोपणः तस्माच्च प्रकृतिस्थानां क्लेदनो बलवर्धनः क्षीणक्षयविषार्तानां विशेषेण तु पूजितः. Now, as I told you, it's a diversion of the topic. Like when about the dietetics, the discussion was the dietetics. Somebody might have question like how the environment can affect, and among the environment, primarily the air, the breeze which occurs, and the breeze again it would have its own qualities, and based upon the direction of the flow, there would be different qualities. Like air moving from the eastern side would have snigdha lavana guna, and it can producing vidaha, and raktapitta then it can aggravate the raktapitta. Now these factors like the air, whether it's flowing from the eastern or northern or southern direction, again it would be depending upon the geography of that particular area. Now, according to what Sushra has said, Sushra probably might have discussed in the context of northern India, like near the Himalayas, and there it's mentioned like Paschimo Martha Tikshna Kapha Medo Vishoshanaha. The Paschima Martha, wind flowing from the western side, is considered as a Tikshna and drying up, Kapha Medo Vishoshanaha. Sadhya Pranakshayakaraha, it can reduce the this vital power of the person, and it dries up the body. But this may not be absolutely true in our area. In the coastal area, those who are living in Udupi, the western wind, the westerly winds would be very moist. There will be significant humidity, and they aggravate the kapha vyadhi, not kapha medo vishoshana. They do not dry up the kapha, rather it increases. So there is a need to review these effects of the air depending upon the geographical factors, and there can be a lot of variation. So these factors are true in the context of what Sushra said, and depending upon the geographical location of the area where it was studied. So there is a need to study this impact of these air qualities and impact on the air over the health. This is another issue of a totally new sort of issue for the contemporary science. Contemporary science doesn't really bother much about that. Where the analysis would be only based upon the contents there, either the pollutants or maybe the dust and so on. So that's how it's studied. But the impact upon the natural capacity, natural properties of the air, the humidity contents, and their qualities, even warmth and so on, that fact is another of the issue where the proper study is not done. Now, when I speak about the food, nutrition and so on, whatever is, in WHO has made a very huge project about study of the food, nutrition, physical activity, and in context of prevention of cancer. It's a huge budget project, and it has released a compendium on this food nourishment with more than 1,000 pages, 1,600 pages, and it's available there. Now, it's quite important from the Indian context. There, in that there is a study of a vast, huge areas of these native food substances, their impact and their nourishment value, and their impact upon the health and diseases, particularly cancer. And when it comes to the question of India, unfortunately, it is a very, we should be aware of that. About the India, there is one sentence which says in page 100 and 663 that there is no native food habit in India. It's wonderful. India is one country where the Paka Shastra, that science of preparation of the food, is presented as a separate science and separate Vidya. Among the 64 Vidyas, Paka Shastra is considered as one of the quite important Vidya, and you have a huge literature and technique of preparation depending upon the relative areas, different cultures, and that huge variations. Probably you may not have that kind of a rich information in any other country, but in the WHO's data, it is simply mentioned that there is virtually no such traditional or native food substance. Rather, the food habits of India are now just have the global impact, have the maximum global impact. Partially true, but that our traditional rich knowledge is not really recognized. And then there is another para about the food consumption and the qualities of food consumption in India. I have just copied this page, and it's what they have said is there is a significant reduction of the grain consumption, particularly coarse grains. Although this has not affected overall energy consumption, this is probably due to large increase in intakes of fat and animal protein. There is a change in the food habits in India, and consumption of these proteins and milk products have increased. In lower income households, fat comes mainly from vegetable foods with very little consumption of animal fats, whereas the highest income households, the majority of fat is from animal sources, and India is major producer of vegetable and fruits, and much of which are exported. This is what says, like, Indian people, they have their source of food, but they do not consume properly. The food habits are unhealthy, and they are totally dependent upon the global information. Now, the healthy diet for adults, this is what the WHO says, WHO's advice, what should be the ideal diet, and again, which doesn't really have anything related to the the combination of the food and the direct impact upon the health. And this again is, I would say, like absolutely a very silly information compared to the richness of the information which we have in our traditional sources. And of course, there is no need to read out. Those who are interested, they can just read, go through. It's exactly, I have copied it directly from the WHO source. And the maximum claimed throughout, if you go into the modern literature, the maximum advice is about what we call as the Mediterranean diet pyramid, which is supposed to be suitable for all, healthy. And this is what they say: you have to have the maximum is about the physical exercise. Then the next is the maximum amount of vegetables, lesser amount of the non-vegetarian food, and these poultry, particularly eggs and poultry, that red meat is much lesser, and further meats and sweets, the less than that. Alcohol is considered to be moderation, and everyday water. This is what the Mediterranean diet, which is absolutely silly if you consider the information which we have in India. And again, another, we should be aware of all these issues, so it's not directly, but very interesting. There is a dietary guidelines for Indians released by the National Institute of Nutrition in 2014, and this has a very elaborate 160 pages document which suggests about the different diet advices. And unfortunately, the whole document doesn't have even a reference to the same habits, dietetics which are present in our tradition, and virtually no reference to that Ayurvedic information about the dietetics. But this is considered as to be an official document of ICMR and presented along with the Ministry of Health advisors. And that food pyramid which is suggested by that Indian document is almost a copy of the Mediterranean diet. Virtually copy, but slight modification. It is the same thing like consume adequately, eat liberally, and eat moderately, and eat sparingly. This is what they have suggested, classified the food based upon the qualities. It's exactly the same Mediterranean diet, and only one thing is, instead of that moderate alcohol, it is, has to be, it's avoided. That's the only good thing which you see over there. Now, to come to the last point, one quite important and quite essential is, of course, now we have lots of regulation about the food quality. You have FSSAE and then the POSCO, the regulation authorities, where anyone who sells the food should be registered and the quality should be checked. But what we get is now maximum of the food which you get outside is having one of the most toxic substance, the Ajinomoto or monosodium glutamate. So from that point of view, and FSSA has accepted this as one of the acceptable content of the food. And unfortunately, these are all the controversial issues, but I think I would have to highlight about this issue when we discuss about the rich information about the dietetics in Ayurveda. Monosodium glutamate or the taste maker, Ajinomoto, which is now an essential content of every food which you consume, particularly the junk food, all that your pizza and so on, which I usually criticize, like whenever you consume those substances, and particularly Chinese food, which has high content of that Ajinomoto, it's considered to be highly toxic. It has a cumulative property, and the immediate complications or immediate symptoms produced due to consumption of this Ajinomoto is a headache, flushing, sweating, and so on. And in long run, it's toxic to the kidney, toxic to the liver, and even neurotoxic. It can produce the neurotoxicity. But unfortunately, this has become an essential component. People use more of Ajinomoto more than that of the salt even. And till very recently, maybe it was initially limited to the hotels and those commercial food producers, but unfortunately now it has entered into the home kitchen even. So at least, if we do not go into further details, at least we should be in a position to avoid these toxic food substances and maintain the health as such. With this, it is Sushrutamsam Sutrasthane hitahitiya nama Vimshodhyaya. Healthy diet planning is the mainstay of staying healthy. Concept of Patya, Apatya, Viruddhahara are unique contributions of Ayurveda, and they need to be maintained. And when I said about that dietetics of the ICMR, there was someone talk about a preparation of a dietetics from Ayush Ministry also, and but it hasn't yet gained momentum. And if at all possible, it should be there, and we should be in a position to retrieve those traditional information about the dietetics and bring it to the use of common man and maintain the improve the health of the nation. With this, I would like to conclude. If there are any questions, one is Virechana Vamana is Sadhya Vamana Virechana, or should we give a classical? Say, I don't believe in Sadhya Vamana and Virechana. Whenever you say Virechana or Vamana, it should be having all that Pura Karma, Pradhana Karma, Paschat Karma protocol. Sadhya Vamana is when you consume more naturally, there could be a spontaneous vomiting. The only rule is, if there is a spontaneous vomiting, you are not supposed to suppress. That's the basic issue. Then, sir, in case of anaphylactic reaction, what can be done in Ayurveda? So, anaphylactic reaction, when it's presented severely, it's a very severe, serious condition. And in such conditions, you may need an emergency drug. It's a medical emergency. And from Ayurvedic point of view, probably, as far as my experience is concerned, we may not have much to do. We need an emergency drug to save the life of the patient. Then, sir, please throw some light on Viruddha as it is mentioned in Apatya. Uh, Viruddha, Viruddhaka or Viruddhahara. Now, Viruddhahara, as already I have told, there is a issue of combination, but combination producing these complications. But we do not know exactly, like that kind of study is not done in the current sense. In the with the current biology point of view, that kind of study is not done. So, but practically, it's absolutely true. It's a absolute Virudhaka Muraka Kalu. That's Virudha sprouted seeds. I think Virudhaka is probably the idea is about the sprouted. No? Yes. Whether sprouts are useful in diabetics or not. Of course, the sprouted seeds, the advantages as far as the current knowledge is concerned, I am talking about, they are easily digestible. then they would have more protein content. Nucleic acid is activated, so it will have acidic pH, and hence the nutrition can be taken by the body easily. The total metabolic load of the substances will be lesser after sprouting. This is what's mentioned. But as far as my experience is concerned, if you make the seeds sprout, it produces more of a sour taste, and it produces something like the flatulence, and then sort of sour irritations will be more. This is what I have experienced. So if when I take the grains, I don't allow it to sprout, but I just make it moist, and the moist seeds where it's kept in water for only some 6 to 8 hours, not allowed to sprout. See, sprouting it needs around 24 hours of that keeping moisture. And when I use particularly, this is purely my personal experience, I prefer to use those cereals or grains in a moist condition where they are moistened for about 6 to 8 hours overnight, and then I eat, and then you'll not have that sore irritation. This is my personal experience. But as far as the data available with the current studies, this kind of an aspect is not presented as such. I think that answers your question. Then in the diabetics, of course, it's generally advisable because it's I don't say that it's having much advantage, but because it produces the nourishment, more of vitamins and then nucleic acids, in any of the patients who have a chronic disease, it's advisable. And again, there again, when I advise, I don't advise sprouting, but I advise the moistened or maybe wet seeds where they have become softened. So the biological activity has just started, but has not reached to the level where the nucleic acids are activated. So that's my version. But as far as the current version of the literature, sprouted seeds are definitely more advantageous than non-sprouted seeds in patients who have any chronic disease, including diabetics. Diabetes, as said. I think that's about the question. I think diabetic and CKD are interrelated. Whether this no protein, as far as the current knowledge, protein is not harmful. It's only the fat which is harmful in such conditions, and the fat becomes more easily digestible in sprouted seeds. So that's the basic issue. So in case of cardiac or other illness, sprouted seeds are not contraindicated as per the current knowledge, right? So with this, okay. With thank you, sir. Let us
Thank you,
conclude.
sir.